me and what I do in my other life. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, but I mostly work with people on energy psychology, neuroscience, quantum physics, spirituality, that kind of thing, nutrition science, on changing how you approach your relationship with food and your body from the inside out. Now, that work happens to be my passion. I just happen to love working with people on food and body image. However, the principles that we talk about are applicable to every area of your life. And when I was thinking about this group of women, really successful, high achievers, go-getters, what are the things that we as a collective struggle with? And I wanted to talk today about stress. One of the biggest things people ask me about is stress eating constantly. And back about a year ago, an anniversary of what was happening in our world with COVID, I started getting requests from companies to talk about the role of stress in their organization as it pertained to what was happening in COVID. And so I did a number of these presentations about what stress really is and how it impacts us and why we should pay more attention to it. If you, depending on some of the leading researchers on stress and the impact of stress, that stress is truly the epidemic of our time, and the impact of it has a trickle-down effect in every area of our lives, which I will talk a little bit about today. So I thought I would go through part of that presentation with you all as it pertains to stress in general, sort of what it is, why we should pay attention to it, and then some things that we can do about it. I'll try and condense it. I won't go over every one of the details like I did for some of these other companies. I don't think you all need as much of that, but certainly jump in, interrupt me, ask me questions. And I hope that this is helpful. I hope that by the end, you'll have a couple takeaways of, number one, the role it might be playing in your life, whether it was the last year or maybe currently, and then a couple of things that we can do to address it that might be a different mindset shift than what we were thinking about from stress, how we were thinking about stress before. Yeah. Let me go to share my screen. There we go. Let's do this.
What a relevant topic for high achievers.
Right? I think so. Okay. Tell me, if you will. No, that's not it. Is that it? Do you see anything? There we go.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so, and I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the time. Where's my time? I'll keep it here. Okay. So I think I'll tell you a little bit about my story when it comes to stress, because it was part of what helped me really create this presentation. And I was doing this for Ernst & Young and a bunch of other companies who were, especially during COVID, everybody was struggling. C-level executives were struggling all the way into, every part of the workforce. And at that time, there was something clear to point it back to, right? There was all kinds of chaos going on. And I'm talking specifically last year with COVID, and then everything getting shut down, and then schools closing, and then suddenly we're parents trying to do it all, and the workforce changing, and all that stuff. It was very easy to say, oh, clearly this is why we're stressed. However, it's not always the case. So let me talk about that a little bit. Today, we're going to talk about your brain on stress, why you should care, and what you can do about it. This is how I used to feel when everyone used to tell me that you need to reduce stress, right? Like you go to the doctor, I had, my HPA axis was all messed up, and they're like, you need to reduce stress. And that was literally my face going, okay, well, thank you for that beautiful word of wisdom. But this is where it really hit a peak for me, because when my daughter was 2, she got diagnosed with bilateral hip dysplasia, and she ended up over the course of that year with 5 surgeries, and her casts look like this. So she was quite literally, not able to move from the chest down. 5 surgeries. She's 2 years old. I was writing my book at the time. I had been promoted to CEO of my company at the time. My daughter needed 5 surgeries. My husband got laid off, and the doctor was like, you need to reduce stress. I was like, fuck off, right? Like, are you kidding me? I can't, there was nothing in my life that I felt like I could control at the moment. Everything was happening. And I think the point of this was, I think that people, myself included, years ago, I used to think of stress as the stress was the cause. I used to think that there were situations that were causing stress, and in order to reduce stress, I needed to quit my job, get a divorce, have a different job, stop writing a book, and my child needed to be out of the hospital, right? So when we think about reducing stress, we think about it from, well, what are the big things that we can take away? And after researching a lot more and understanding a lot more about the role stress plays in our lives, I realized that we're looking at it all wrong. So that's what I want to talk about today. So stress is a symptom of the circumstance. And what most of us do is we focus on the circumstance, right? I'm really stressed out in my job. Well, maybe I need a new job. I'm really stressed out in my marriage. Well, maybe I need a new husband. I'm really stressed out with my child. Well, maybe I'd like to give it away. When we focus on the circumstance, and in reality, what we should be doing, and what I'll talk more about today, is that we should be focusing on the symptom. So if the symptom is stress, we need to be focusing on the symptom and not the circumstance. And when a doctor says you need to just reduce your stress, we need better ways and better tools to be able to manage the feeling of stress, the emotion of stress, the impact of stress, rather than the circumstance itself. So when, and I know, and I don't know if this is true for any of you all, tell me if you experience this differently. I know for me, especially when someone used to tell me to be less stressed, I thought I had to change the circumstances of my life rather than change my internal landscape. So you guys ever experience that when someone says, you need to stress less, and you're like, well, I can't because I have this huge project coming up and I can't do anything about the project, and I'm fighting with my husband and I can't do anything about my husband, right? Okay. So let's first talk about the science of stress and what stress really is. You've probably heard this before. Stress is when we kick our brain and our body and all of our systems into the sympathetic nervous system. This is when we kick the body into fight or flight response. And the parasympathetic nervous system is I'm not going to say it's the opposite of that. You'll hear why in a minute, but the parasympathetic nervous system is the state in which we kick the body into rest and digest. This is kind of take a deep breath, slow down. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is activated anytime our body is in fight or flight. And here's the bad news, is that we chronically kick our body into fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system, pretty much on a daily basis. They've done a number of studies, and it's not just when COVID hits, and not just when my kid needs a surgery, and not just when, you lose your job. It is perceived threat or perceived difficult experiences also kick our body into sympathetic nervous system fight or flight. So, and that is happening as a whole, that is happening to us as a culture as a whole, pretty acutely these days, meaning pretty regularly. It is the compounding effect, especially for women, of the mental load. It's I'm trying to, do everything I can for my job and take care of my children and make sure I have food in the house so I'm not scrounging for coffee and boiling eggs, and make sure I'm taking care of myself, and make sure I'm exercising, and make sure. Mental load kicks us into fight or flight response, kicks on the sympathetic nervous system, and it's acute. So as you've probably heard before, our systems were designed to deal with stress. We kick the body into fight or flight. Every system in the body is affected: the digestive system, the reproductive system, the musculoskeletal system. They all start to divert resources to deal with the stressor. Okay, so your digestive system slows down, your reproductive system all but, turns off in that moment. The endocrine system, the nervous system, it all diverts its resources to deal with the stressor. And then once the stressor is dealt with, we are supposed to go back to that parasympathetic nervous system into rest or digest, where the resources get rediverted back to where they're supposed to be. The problem is with acute stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, we never go back into rest or digest. And what we've been finding in the research over the last, I'm going to call it 3 decades, don't quote me on that, I'd have to go back and look exactly. But what we've been finding is that we are living in a time where we're seeing unprecedented levels of sympathetic nervous system activation on an acute and regular basis. Now, what does that mean to us? What are we supposed to do with that? Well, what we're finding is that never before has it been more necessary for us to intentionally, on purpose, have to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. So it's not enough just to say, okay, I'm going to try and deal with this stress. It's going to be okay. We have to intentionally, on purpose, put in the time and make the space to activate that parasympathetic nervous system, because the sympathetic nervous system is being overactivated in an acute way. So this is what, I hear a lot. People will say, well, what if I'm not feeling stressed? What if I don't wake up every morning feeling the, anxiety symptoms or the depression symptoms of stress? The answer is, what's happened is that as the body has adjusted to this acute level of sympathetic nervous system signaling, we start to interpret it as our homeostasis, as our new, that's just the way things are, right? The world is moving so fast and I'm checking my phone and then it's all coming at me. And so we get almost numb to it. And so what I can promise, I don't want to overstate, but I can sort of almost promise that if you are being in the position that the women in this call are, I can almost virtually guarantee that unless you have a routine or a ritual that intentionally kicks you into parasympathetic activated nervous system, that you spend a lot of your time in the sympathetic nervous system state. Here's a couple reasons why. So our brains are designed to pick up on danger. That is the way that they were designed. The reptilian part of the brain that sits on your brainstem, the little almond-shaped reptilian part of the brain, was designed to pick up in hunter-gatherer days, when they were in trouble and needed to sense a saber-tooth tiger attack. You've all heard those kinds of things before. But what that did was it refined the part of our brain that is responsible for hypervigilance, for looking for danger, for paranoia, right? And so we know that because we're alive, our ancestors had these highly refined, hypervigilant, paranoia parts of our brain. And so some people will say, why am I always so good at thinking the negative? That's just, it comes naturally. Well, science supports that because we have well-defined parts of our brain that were designed to think that way so that we would be alive here today. It served us well at that point. It doesn't serve us very well anymore, but our brains have not evolved out of it. So we're designed to pick up on danger. So think about the last year, right? Think about the last year with COVID and the election and the vaccines and the mask wearing and all of that stuff. Whether or not we felt stressed in that moment, your brain was on hyperactive mode, wasn't it, over the last year of, okay, what's next and what's dangerous and what's going on? And everybody felt it, I think, right? The brain was just doing what it's designed to do. However, it does come with the impact of that sympathetic nervous system activation. Last year, especially, we had overactivation because we were really worried about these bottom 3 tiers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So quite literally, for some people, there was that physical tier of, food, shelter, rest, health, right? When we have this activation of, am I worried about living or dying? We're down in that very, very bottom tier of our hierarchy of needs. Until we get those needs met, we don't move up to the connection to that second tier, which is, security, safety, shelter, stability, right? Well, everybody's jobs are up in the air and they're all moving and shaking and, industries are changing. Stability starts to get threatened. Until we have that set, now we can't go up to the social. Well, you've got need for love and belonging and inclusion. Well, now we can't see each other, right? We're all social distancing. So the last year of everybody's lives, we were really far down into these hierarchy of needs. We were down in these bottom 3 tiers. And when we're down in these bottom 3 tiers, these are just survival, security, where am I in the social integration? The point of this is that we have much less access, if any at all, to those top 2 tiers. When we're talking about, being able to be productive at work, creativity, development, expansion, growth, all of those things, we're stuck down here into that stress activation of those bottom 3 tiers, right? So that's another way that maybe you're not actively feeling it in the moment. Oh, I'm super stressed out. Although I argue that a lot of people were the last year. When your brain is picking up all of the information in the background, wondering about these bottom 3 tiers, then it starts to shut off access to the more creative parts of the self. And here's how that works. So executive functioning, which is responsible actually, I'll just go straight to it. So the executive functioning part of the brain is responsible for all of these actions, considering the future and making predictions, focusing your attention, forming strategies and planning, inhibiting inappropriate behavior and initiating appropriate behavior, shifting and adjusting behavior when situations change. You can see all these things. When we are in sympathetic nervous system activation, which will go all the way back to the beginning of this, which most of us have been in sympathetic nervous system activation, I'm going to argue all of us, the executive functioning part of the brain we have less access to. Again, we're diverting the resources to different areas of the body that the brain thinks it needs to go to so that we can deal with the stressor. And we have less access to the executive functioning part of the brain. This is the part of the brain that's responsible for all of these things: making good decisions, thinking through decisions, understanding consequences of our behavior, creativity, foresight, planning, execution of those plans. So I can't tell you how many people are coming to me. I can't think, I can't plan, I don't know how to get my life together, I can't focus, everything's fine, I have a paycheck, why can't I think about all these things? Well, you've got sympathetic nervous system activation going on in the background that's making it harder to have access to these parts of your brain. The threat response system is activated, and when the threat response system gets activated, guess what we want? Comfort food. There's a whole, comfort food is cliche, but it's also a thing. Salt, sugar, fat turns down the threat response system temporarily in that moment. And so your brain is seeking out that type of food to make you feel better, right? So again, in my work, this happens all the time. People are, I'm stressed. Why can't I stop eating? Well, this is one of the major reasons why. If you struggle with stress eating, put together those last few slides, which is you have less access to the executive functioning part of your brain that says, don't do things that are bad for you. Your brain is seeking out food that's going to make it feel better. So it's sending you all kinds of triggers, sending you all kinds of signals saying, eat this, it makes you feel better momentarily. And so it makes it harder for you to say no to those type of foods. And then after the binge into the donuts, well, what do you feel? Your serotonin has crashed, okay? And stress, not only does stress in general disrupt your endocrine system, and 90% of your serotonin is produced in the gut. Serotonin is your feel-good hormone. Not like dopamine feel good, that's pleasure feel good, but the serotonin is sort of, let's call it your happiness hormone. And so the serotonin that allows you to just sort of be happy and at peace, 90% of that is produced in your gut. Well, now you're feeding it with all of the salt, sugar, fat, disrupts the gut. Add that to the stress because your endocrine system has been disrupted and you got a mess here, right? Now your guilt, shame, frustration, and the lower serotonin level is contributing to the sympathetic nervous system activation. I'm just painting the picture for you here before I give you all the beautiful tools to be able to manage it, okay? Serotonin helps you regulate your mood, social behavior, appetite and digestion, sleep, memory, sexual desire and function. So if your serotonin levels are off, you've got a lot of disruption in your life in other areas, okay? And then finally, what happens when we're stressed? You can think of waking up every morning. Let's think of your ability to make decisions like gas in a fuel tank. And if you're lucky, which people under stress are not, if you're lucky, you start with a full gas tank. Let's say that you're stressed, so you start with 3/4 of a gas tank. And every decision you make throughout the day takes a little bit of gas out of that gas tank. So you wake up in the morning, what do your kids want for lunch? What am I going to wear? What meetings do I have? Am I going to take a shower? Am I going to work out? Da, 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 da. You're making decisions all day long. By the time you get to the end of the day, you're wiped. The gas is out of your gas tank. And when someone says to you, hey, what's for dinner? And our mind goes, I have a hard-boiled egg. That's all I got. You are using the gas in the gas tank all day long. Okay, does this sound familiar to anybody but me? Because, yeah, we all have felt this overwhelm. And I think, truly, I'm not, not to take anything away from what men experience, but the mental load that women carry, not just of the jobs that we're doing, but all of the other pieces that go into it, all go into every one of these decisions, our executive functioning, and it takes a little piece of it, right, here and there. So I won't go over in detail all of the symptoms of stress. You guys can have this presentation. I'll send it along to Rebecca. She can send it to you. But stress, so going all the way back to the beginning of the presentation, it's not just, hey, my job is really stressful, or I'm fighting with my husband, or, my kid's in the hospital. It is the culmination of the way stress disrupts our nervous system, and then the trickle down effect of all of the pieces of all of the different systems in the body that are impacted: the digestive system, the nervous system, the musculoskeletal system, your hormone system, your endocrine system, all of that are impacted, and then they all interact with each other. Got emotional symptoms of stress, got the physical symptoms of stress. You don't have to write these down. I'll send them to you. Got cognitive symptoms of stress, behavioral symptoms of stress. And all of it leads to this. Yes. And we end up feeling like that, and we don't totally understand why. And what happens is we go, well, I can't quit my job. I don't want to leave my husband. I don't want to get rid of my children, and I can't do anything. So what do I do, right? And this is where I want people to start thinking about stress differently. So now that we know that stress is a culmination of the activation of the sympathetic nervous system, we can ask a better question, which is, okay, well, how do we activate the parasympathetic nervous system then? And will that help? That's the question we should be asking. So what we need to do about this is we need to become intentional about activating that parasympathetic nervous system on purpose, on a regular basis, like daily basis. You don't have to quit your job, leave your marriage, move away, or uproot your life. We can manage stress without having to deal with the situation. And moreover, it's better to manage stress rather than feeling like, well, I have to change my circumstances. Because if you're always having to change your circumstances, then you're always relying on the circumstances having to be perfect in order to manage your stress. Yes?
And all of our circumstances are so interwoven that if you change one, you leave the husband, now you got a co-parent. That's a whole different stress. You leave your job,
Exactly.
you got to find another job. That's a whole stress, right? It's all interdependent.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I believe that the conversation about stress has been changing, which is good. More towards, I think people also used to think about stress. It was like, go get a massage and have a date night and all these things. And yay, those things are amazing. But people need ways to manage their day-to-day lives in this sympathetic nervous system activation that are accessible, that are repeatable, that can be consistent, and that we can feel a significant benefit from on a regular basis. So
one of the things that we, Eliza, talk about for those that are in the Rise and Thrive group, we talk about what are those things that feed your soul? I call it soul food. What are those practices? Yeah. How is stillness and reflection a part of the strategy? It shouldn't be seen as something, like you said, that's date night or special. It should be a part, just like you strategize for your business, the stillness practice is how you strategize for yourself.
Yes, so much yes to that. And so hopefully these things will not be news. It's just a reiteration of all the things that you've been talking about, because that's what it is. It's the what are the things that feed your soul. And I think, tell me if you see this as well, Rebecca, I think people see that as, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I had time to do that? And it becomes it becomes, if I have time, I'll fit that in. And I like to talk about stress in this way to iterate. If you don't make time to fit that in, what you're going to be making time for is some disease, some health issue, something else, because the acute activation of stress will not go away with a massage or, a job change or whatever. It's a part of our lives right now. And it is in response to the, well, it's a totally different topic, which maybe we can talk about another time, but it's in response to the way that culturally we have now filled every moment of our lives. That's the culture, is that every moment.
Yeah.
And that has created this acute activation. It's not going anywhere. And so the only way that we're going to, and I sound dramatic here, and I think I'm okay with sounding dramatic on this because I think it's that important. The only way we're going to combat that is to inject a routine, inject time, inject on purpose the ways to activate the other system, because otherwise we'll just keep filling, and the stress will just keep spreading in whatever areas of your body. And there are people who say, who knows, this is a far reach, but there are people who say all disease, all obesity, all cancer, all whatever is derived from an energetic imbalance in the body, which can be addressed with stress management tools. Take that for what you will. I don't know, but it's kind of a big statement, right? So what do we do? The good news is that a lot of what we can do to manage this, if not all of it, is free, and it's accessible to everybody. It's just that we view it as a luxury rather than a necessity, right? And so actually I meant to send you, there's a document that goes along with it.
You can post, you have your own topic area in the Mighty Network. You can put all those documents in there.
I'll put it in there. So I'll put it in there today. It's called the COVID Stress Response Toolkit. I built it a while back when I was building it for these companies. That's why it's called COVID Stress Response, but it's relevant, and it has all of these works, and it has links to this stuff. So you can kind of read it and do with it what you want. Breath work is free and really, really powerful. So really good research on diaphragmatic breathing. And so again, in the toolkit, I have a link to, diaphragmatic breathing, and you can go take a look at it. Super easy to teach yourself how to do. Most people are breathing wrong, believe it or not. And that comes from stress. We breathe really shallow. We have really shallow breaths, and we don't expand our diaphragm and our lung capacity. And even just teaching yourself to breathe differently for 1 minute a day, 3 times a day, just doing a diaphragmatic breathing will activate your parasympathetic nervous system and take you out of the stress response. Super easy to do. If you can ask yourself, can you fit in 1 minute of breathing 3 times a day? Probably can. You can read about breath work. Nature, for those of you who have the ability and access to get out into nature, a lot of really good study on how nature impacts our parasympathetic nervous system. So just getting out of the house, can you make 10 minutes, every day? Rebecca, you're always posting your walks and stuff like that. I mean, this is all part of that reset of the nervous system. Exercise, obviously. And exercise, here's what I want to say about exercise for the sake of relaxation. So you've all done the exercise where it just feels so good, whether it's okay, I got a great Peloton release or whatever. But when I was in my 20s, it was like, how many calories am I burning? And I'm not burning enough calories, and it's got to be more intensity and whatever, which contributes to the stress.
Mm-hmm.
So the exercise with the intention of, sure, I mean, get your sweat on. If that, we all know what a good sweat feels like. That's great. But with the intention of release, with the intention of letting go of whatever we're holding on to, or that work email or whatever, right? There's a difference. We've all felt that.
I've had a few clients who were so like 5 a.m. Orange Theory, or I'm a loser, that I've had to say, look, I think you should sleep in. Like, I think that's contributing to your stress, not helping. So totally.
Yeah. Rebecca, stop talking about me. I'm right here.
That wasn't you I was thinking about, actually. That's funny because it wasn't your face in my head, but I see you, girl. I see you.
Meanwhile, I do those early morning workouts, but I'm the one that, like, the trainer says something to me and then I'm bawling. I'm like, oh my God, yes.
Oh. Yeah, we have to understand, and I think all of us are of an age where we can really be mindful about our intention and purpose, behind doing those things. I'm the first to raise my hand and say that I had a pretty unhealthy relationship with exercise when I was younger, and even just shifting in the mindset, even if it's the same workout, but shifting in the mindset helps cue the body into rest and digest mode of, we're doing this, to take care of ourselves, and it feels differently, and so much power in shifting a mindset and your intention.
And that mindset piece, the thing I'm always trying to instill is that this stillness work I call reflection is again part of the strategy. So if your mindset is, this is just as important as my weekly sales meeting, or this is just as important as and so I even encourage, depending on the preferences of clients, like I have a station for reflection. There's a stool, it's got my journal, it's got my pen, there's a place to put my coffee. So when I get up in the morning, it's a visual cue that's strategy. Or building like breath work into, I love my morning coffee routine that, I blend this and it's this like Zen-like rote thing that I do every morning that I kind of try to build in. This as a stillness practice is making my coffee, but nothing else gets in. I'm not multitasking on my phone. I'm just being present in it, and it gives me calm. So there are ways I always say, build in whatever you've got going. Now let's build this in so it doesn't feel like it's some separate thing that can be left behind.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's a really good point, because, you don't want to make this something that stresses you out because you have to do it. Understanding, that's why I like to go through a little bit of the science, because it takes it from a nice to have to a need to have, ideally, because we're understanding when you do that, when you build in that time for reflection, or just even if it's 5 minutes and you have a coffee routine and you're not checking your phone and you're looking out the window and you're, whatever it is, you move your brain into what I call active intention. And if you don't move your brain into active intention, it is automatically in passive reactivity throughout the day. So you probably have all felt it. You wake up in the morning and your brain is searching. Oh, yep, my to-do list, got it. And then bam, your brain is off for the day. What do I have to do? What are my, and are the kids' lunch made? And is the laundry? And and bam, you are in passive reactivity all day long. What I mean by passive reactivity is that your brain is just a collection of what you did every day before, and all of the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and processes. And that's what it knows how to do. Rote memorization, and that's what it's going to do unless you intentionally bump it off course. That's its job. And so we are in passive reactivity all day long. The only time until you train your brain to do it differently. Mm-hmm. And so if all you do is give yourself that time in the morning, or maybe it's 10 minutes, or even, it doesn't matter how long you give it. Now you can recalibrate to active intention. And when you recalibrate it to active intention, you have more access. This is the paradox of it. You have more access to the thoughts you need to get that to-do list done better, faster, and more efficiently. When you go into active intention, you're going to do better on that sales call because your brain is now kicked into a different mode. So I think the paradox is, we slow down to get more effective. We slow down to be more efficient, because we're a culture of filling every moment and filling all of our time. We don't have as much access to executive functioning. We don't have as much access to clarity and good decision making. And now we're doing 100 things 70% rather than 40 things at 100%, right? So this is the beauty of some of these things. And you guys can go through these tools on the toolkit. I want to give you time to talk here, but meditation, quite literally shifting brain matter. If you don't have a meditation practice, it does not need to be super scary. I think on my COVID toolkit, I talk about the 3, 3, and 3 meditation. If not, I'll put a note in there for you guys. Super simple, but quite literally changes brain matter if you don't have meditation practice. Gratitude practice, I think we talked about last time, and I know you have mentioned, I'm sure, Rebecca, and then reducing processed foods and sugar. So, of course, that's a lot of the work that I do with people, but not for the sake of, weight loss and body composition, but because those foods are designed, the way that they are designed scientifically and chemically messes with your serotonin level, messes with your threat response system, throws off the system in your body, and you're less able to manage stress, deal with the emotions of stress, and make good decisions for yourself. It seems like a low-hanging fruit to be able to say, you know what, it's not about the calories, it's not about the weight in this thing, but it's about the way that it impacts my ability to be effective in my life. So. Yeah.
Carrie had a recommendation in the chat of a book that she read called When the Body Says No, that addresses the disease stress link, that she says is really fascinating.
Cool. When the Body Says No.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that, Carrie.
It's written by a Canadian physician who's been studying this work for it was actually written at least 15 years ago. And it's fascinating, and it was mind-blowing to me. And he's also written an interesting book on addiction, kind of taking a similar approach, called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And I think it takes a lot of the same I guess, the same approach and looking at, addiction in society and, finding kind of different or exploring different quote causes of it. And it's really interesting. So I highly recommend it.
Cool. I feel like I breezed through that. I usually have 2 hours for this thing, but wondering how everybody feels. Any questions? I don't know. I guess I thought this would be it was certainly a relevant topic for me as I started to learn about stress differently and how to manage it and think about it differently. I hope maybe it was helpful for you all.
It's so relevant. Oh my gosh. I just messaged Emily and said, hey, I recorded this because she's in Emily Shaw is in the throes of a bunch of new clients landed all at the same time, which is a great problem to have, but it's also like when her brain has been on fire. So I was like, I got you, girl. I can't think of a topic that's more relevant for high achieving women, and the way you've broken it down to relate to the decision fatigue, overwhelm of all, even working from home, men have said, but everybody's there. The kids still come to mom for everything, right? We get bombarded with all the things. One of the pieces of this that's integral, and you touched on it, is flipping the script on when I slow down, I actually get more done. Like that is just such a juxtaposition from our habits and what we've been told and taught. And I think it sits really closely to our high achiever mindset of always feeling like we're in the mode of proving ourselves. Women have this deep-seated, well, I'll prove myself and then I'll either get this opportunity or I'll earn the right to this. Like we have to just earn it. And that puts us into this activity-based mode that's really counterproductive from what we really, really want. And you can validate that like you've done with neuroscience. You can validate it spiritually in the Bible. Those are principles. I mean, you can read about Einstein's time, right? Where it's just a totally different way of thinking about time and task. That if we don't get that piece, it's really hard to put it into practice because we gotta believe it at some point. So either practice it until it works, or just decide to believe it and then go for it. I mean, how do you work with your clients to kind of flip that script?
I think one of the interesting things, and Joe Dispenza actually talks a lot about this, is that we get addicted to our dominant emotions. And so, for instance, I think especially in high achievers, the addiction is productivity. The addiction is tasks, right? Checking off tasks or to-do lists. The addiction is I have so much to do. The addiction is I'm so busy. And it's not intentional, but what it is a repetition of a dominant emotion or a dominant feeling that we've memorized so acutely in the body that the body is in the driver's seat. So anytime that you have something dominant like that, where we do it without even knowing, that's a habit, right? And really a lot of our emotions and even the things that drive our productivity are just ingrained, learned dominant feelings and dominant emotions. So we have this need in order to recognize who we are. We have this need. That gets developed over time of, I'm busy. I've got so much to do. I've got this big to-do list. I have so many tasks I need to cross off, right? And in reality, it's important to tease apart, so there's there's the book, what is it called? The One Thing, where it becomes, switching how you look at your day, which is, what is the most important thing I can get done today that if by doing it, I can cross off all these other little things that make me so much more productive. To your point, Rebecca, it's about, am I addicted to busyness? Mm-hmm. And if I were to either let that go or start to shift my the way I describe that or shift my intention. So going back to last time, the who am I becoming? I've got my job. Let's take just the job. I got my job. Who do I want to be in my job? And not so much my promotion but who do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody that, gets through tasks easily and knows what my most important tasks are or my KPIs are and be able to, whatever it is. Who do I want to be? And then we start to ask ourselves, well, what would I have to do to be that person? Because right now I'm hustle, productivity, no time, no space, I'm stressed, But if I'm saying I want to be this person, what would I have to do to be that person? Where's the gap? And we start focusing on how to close that gap based on the blueprint of where we've said we want to go. I plan to do that in the next round. But
yeah, that'd be great. I love the connecting those two pieces from session 1 and session 2. Who has questions and thoughts and concerns in our last few minutes we've got? This is so rich. What are you guys thinking?
I personally love this because I am in the midst of all of this craziness right now and like breakdown to my husband on a daily basis of tears. But I wanted to bring something up because I'm going to flip so I can look at my work screen here. So JP Morgan Chase, they have what is called an equilibrium. I mean, you get like emails or whatever. So I finally like logged in and took their assessment, and it's all about your mental health. And so this kind of ties in to it was like finding your personality and then understanding what your signature emotion is. And tying in your emotions to the stress, I thought it was truly fascinating. So it identified me as a caregiver. So my motto is, I'll take care of it, which is very like Rebecca knows, like, I'll do it. Everybody don't worry, I'll take care. But then it made me realize that like my core emotion that makes me do that is embarrassment. And so it's the thought of I've lost standing in someone's eyes. And so just kind of taking the stress piece and realizing how that plays into your life and what emotion do you feel from that? Like stress isn't an emotion, but what is that emotion that you feel in your core and why? And like peeling back the onion that way. I just wanted to add in the emotion piece because I thought that was fascinating.
What is that called?
It's called equilibrium. It's like ME and then QUILIBRIM. There's an app for it too. And it like takes me through like different things like breathing exercises every day and things like that. I can share it with you, Rebecca, and you can send it out to everyone.
Okay, cool. Yeah, love that.
Just a loving piece of reminder, Stephanie, is that, caretakers, most often, it's very cliche, but it's also very true. Most often are very willing to take care of others, but then when you turn that, if you're such a, you're such a caretaker, but then where do you fit on that totem pole of importance? And we're so willing to break contracts with ourselves for the sake of taking care of others, and it's just such a paradox, right? Of we know better, and we have to do better. So.
And then not shaming yourself, right? Do that.
Yeah.
Who else? Questions, comments?
I just think it's super relevant. I don't think, again, I'll just referencing back to that book that I had mentioned. I think that was I just read it within the last, I don't know, less than a year. And I think that really, it opened up my eyes to, I think it's stuff that I'd always probably intuitively thought or believed as far as like stress and disease and like how one manifests the other. But I think reading it in print and, having it done from or written by a credible, like a physician, right? I just think it cannot be underestimated. And I think being more self-aware of that now, for not only myself, but like seeing other people, right? And how you almost kind of can see this stuff like unfold in front of you. And it almost feels like you're watching a train wreck in slow motion. And it just makes me just very self-aware, right? Of like most of the shit I'm, whatever over, it's probably not that big of a deal in the whole grand scheme of things, or it's not a chronic issue. It's a right here, right now issue. So I think I'm just trying to be, I don't know, just very mindful, right? Very mindful of that, and take that time to get out of the sympathetic nervous system into the para.
Because it does have a compound effect. When I left Franklin Covey, I had about 6 months of unwinding. I didn't realize how much I had normalized the frenetic pace to the point of almost like PTSD. It was fascinating, and a big wake-up call. So
yeah, I believe it.
Yeah. I hear you. Well, we're at the top of the hour. So relevant. Oh my gosh. And I literally was going to say to you, if we had time before we started, hey, I had this weird thing happen that triggered me. Why is my first response that I either need a shot of something or a cheeseburger? Just earlier today, I had a conversation with somebody that really upset me. And I'm clean eater. I've been doing, especially, this last few weeks, really working on those last few COVID pounds. And I was just immediately, like, my emotions just, I wanted to cry, drink, and have a cheeseburger, and probably a side of fries in the midst of it. And you just explained it to me without me even have to ask some questions. So thank you.
That was me on Monday too. I did the same thing.
And I just had to like, and it's also a situation where it's a conversation with somebody that most of my people, so I can't even just like go to somebody and talk it through, because I'm honoring that. And so I was like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And now I know that I just need to go take my walk after Whitney and I have our session at 2. I'll go take my walk. I'll probably go for a run later and just let my body do what my body does best. Good stuff.
Love it. I'm so glad.
Thank you. And you all, if you have questions or things in between Eliza's sessions, like real-time stuff that comes up, you can always post stuff in the Mighty Network. It notifies her if she gets a message or a question. So Eliza, you can put the documents in, you have a topic area there. And if you guys have questions or anything that come up between now and the next time, pop them in there. It'd be great.
Right.
All right. I love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
This was really good. Thank you.
Spring. See ya.